The sound came first, a sharp command that sliced through the morning air like a verdict. Get out of here. The marble steps of the courthouse shimmered in the winter sun, cameras flashing from every direction as a black woman in a cream suit stood perfectly still. Two police officers flanked her, hands raised, authority burning in their eyes. One of them shouted again, louder this time. I said move. She didn't. She simply adjusted the strap of her briefcase, calm as if time itself had slowed for her. And then, the slap, clean, public, and final. The crowd gasped, phones rose, and somewhere a single voice muttered, God, she didn't even fight back. But she wasn't supposed to. Not yet. Because the courtroom she was being dragged away from wasn't just any courtroom. It was hers. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. The slap still echoed off the courthouse pillars as Officer Turner gripped her arm. Don't make me say it again, he hissed, pushing her backward. The woman's name was Tianna Blake, 42 years old, Harvard Law, former federal prosecutor. But no one in that moment cared about resumes. To them, she was just another black woman standing too close to the steps of power. The marble beneath her heels felt colder than it should have. Tourists stared. Lawyers hurried past pretending not to see. The other officer, Hale, sneered. You people always think the rules don't apply to you. Tianna didn't respond. Her silence wasn't surrender, it was precision. She knew every camera was already rolling. From the top of the stairs, a teenage intern named Maria watched, phone trembling in her hand. She recognized the face instantly from the morning docket. Judge T. Blake, appointed to preside over the civil rights appeal scheduled for 10 a.m. She wanted to scream, but fear glued her to the rail. Turner shoved Tianna again. Did you hear me? This is restricted property. So is justice, she said quietly, barely more than breath. Her voice was soft, but it landed heavy. Hale stepped closer, jaw tight. Don't get smart. His hand twitched near his baton. Tianna's eyes flicked toward the giant bronze doors of the courthouse, the same doors she'd dreamed of walking through as a little girl from Southside Chicago, studying law under streetlights because libraries closed early in her neighborhood. And now, decades later, the gates of justice stood in front of her, guarded not by law, but by prejudice. Turner leaned in, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. You think that fancy purse makes you belong here? She met his gaze. No, she said evenly. My credentials do. He laughed, short and ugly. Let's see them then. Before she could move, his hand shot forward and smacked the briefcase out of her grasp. It hit the marble with a hollow thud, scattering papers across the steps, documents stamped with the federal seal. Cameras zoomed in. Someone shouted, Hey man, that's not right. But no one stepped forward. Turner barked, Back off. Tianna crouched to gather her papers, her fingers steady even as her cheek burned. Each page she picked up felt heavier than the last. Motions, rulings, affidavits. Proof that she belonged in this space more than anyone shouting at her. Hale grabbed her arm again. You're done here. Am I? She murmured. For a split second, her eyes lifted toward the emblem above the courthouse doors. In God we trust. The irony almost made her laugh. Behind her, the crowd grew restless. Maria finally stepped down the stairs, voice cracking. Wait, that's Judge Quiet. Hale snapped. Maria froze mid-step. Turner twisted Tianna's arm harder, trying to make her bow. But she didn't bend. She stood taller. And in that stillness, right there between order and chaos, something changed. The crowd's silence wasn't fear anymore. It was awareness. They were watching an arrest that felt like history repeating itself. The moment stretched, charged, impossible to look away from. Turner yelled, You're obstructing justice. Tianna whispered back, No, you are. The line hit harder than the slap. The cameras caught it. Somewhere in the crowd, a reporter lowered his phone and whispered to his mic. This just turned into something else. And it had. Because in less than 60 seconds, the woman they humiliated would walk through those bronze doors, not as a defendant, but as the one holding the gavel. The courthouse steps were no longer just stone. They had become a stage of disbelief. Officer Turner's voice echoed across the plaza, sharp and impatient, as he motioned to Hale. "Get her off the property," he ordered. The crowd murmured, cell phones lifted, recording every second. Tianna Blake stood perfectly still. The red mark from the slap glowed faintly on her cheek, but her composure did not break. Inside her briefcase, now lying open on the ground, her credentials glimmered beneath scattered documents. A judicial appointment letter, embossed with the federal seal. Turner kicked the papers aside without looking. "Fake," he muttered, shaking his head. "People make these all the time." Hale nodded in agreement, voice lower but colder. "Yeah, they print this stuff off the internet. Happens every week." Tiana's eyes stayed on them, not out of fear, but calculation. Every word, every gesture, every insult. She logged them silently like evidence. The cameras kept rolling. Maria, the young intern from the upper steps, tried once again to speak. "She is not lying," she said, voice trembling. "Her name is on the docket. She is Judge Tianna Blake." Turner turned sharply toward her, his hand twitching near his holster. "You want to lose your job today, kid? Then keep talking." Maria froze, tears brimming in her eyes, but her phone stayed steady in her hand. Tianna bent down to pick up her papers. The crisp rustle of legal sheets filled the silence. When she rose, she met Turner's stare and spoke evenly. "You just committed assault on a federal officer." Turner scoffed. "Lady, stop pretending. You are not fooling anyone." Hale added, "If you were a judge, we would know. We have clearance for all officials." Tianna tilted her head slightly. "Then check your clearance again." Turner ignored her and turned to Hale. "Cuff her. Let's make this simple." Hale hesitated, glancing at the growing crowd. Someone shouted from the back. "She said she is a judge. Check her ID." Turner yelled, "Back up." But the command fell flat. The energy had shifted. Even the reporters who had come for a routine hearing now realized they were witnessing something larger. Tiana's phone vibrated inside her coat pocket. She reached for it calmly, ignoring the officer's tense posture. A woman's voice came through the speaker, steady and professional. "Judge Blake, this is Carla from the judicial office. We received your signal." Tianna replied quietly, "Protocol 2. Confirm location and visual." Carla responded, "Confirmed. Cameras live. Law Enforcement Division notified." Tianna looked at Turner and Hale. "You are on record," she said. "Everything you have done is being transmitted to federal oversight in real time." Turner's face paled for the first time. "That is impossible," he said, though his voice betrayed him. "Not impossible," Tianna corrected, "just accountability." Hale stepped back slightly. "You cannot be serious," he said, but he already knew she was. Inside the courthouse, a clerk burst through the doors, panting. "Stop," he shouted. "That woman is the presiding judge for today's hearing." The crowd erupted. Turner's hand fell from his belt. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Hale stepped away from Tianna, his posture collapsing from authority to panic. Maria finally exhaled, whispering, "I told you." Tianna bent down, retrieved her briefcase, and brushed the dust from its corner. She looked at Turner one last time. "You mistook silence for weakness," she said. "That was your last mistake." She turned and began walking up the courthouse steps, each stride deliberate, each step echoing like a gavel. Reporters surged forward, microphones raised. Turner called after her, voice breaking, "Ma'am, wait. We did not know." Tianna stopped halfway up the stairs, not looking back. "That is the problem," she said. "You never know until it costs you." Inside the courthouse lobby, officials and staff stood frozen as she entered. The chief clerk rushed to her side. "Judge Blake, are you all right?" She nodded once. "Proceed with the docket. The session will not be delayed." Her voice carried no anger, only gravity. Behind her, the doors closed, silencing the chaos outside. Turner and Hale remained on the steps, surrounded by cameras and whispers. One reporter approached them, voice sharp. "Officers, do you realize you just assaulted a federal judge?" Turner's lips trembled. We thought she was trespassing." The reporter pressed on. "Based on what?" Turner hesitated, glancing toward the now closed doors. "Her attitude," he said weakly. "Her look." The reporter's eyebrows lifted. "Her look?" The question hung heavy. Hale looked away, his jaw clenched. The footage, already streaming online, would tell the rest. Inside, Tianna reached her chambers. She placed the briefcase on her desk and took a deep breath. The bruise on her cheek had begun to fade, but its weight lingered deeper. She whispered to herself, "Same system, same story. Not today." Then, she pressed the intercom. "Carla, initiate review proceedings for both officers. Make sure this goes through official disciplinary channels. No cover-ups. No edits." Carla's voice came through steady, resolute. "Already in motion, Judge. And for what it is worth, the whole country is watching." Tianna looked out the tall courtroom window. The city spread beneath her like a reflection of every battle she had ever fought. "Good," she said softly. "Let them see what justice looks like when it finally stands up." The courthouse was silent, but it was not peace. It was the kind of silence that carries tension, that heavy quiet after a storm, but before the aftershock. Inside Chamber 2A, Judge Tianna Blake sat behind the bench, her hand resting lightly on the gavel that now belonged to her again. Outside, news cameras still crowded the steps, broadcasting the aftermath of the morning's humiliation. She could hear faint echoes through the windows, murmurs, flashbulbs, the sound of disbelief traveling through a city that had just witnessed the unthinkable. A court officer entered quietly, eyes down. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "the Chief Justice's office is on the line. They would like an immediate update." Tianna nodded. "Patch it through." The speakerphone clicked, and a calm but firm voice came through. "Judge Blake, this is Chief Justice Lowell. We have seen the footage. Are you safe?" Tianna replied. "Physically, yes. Professionally, the situation is now under control." Lowell sighed. "Those officers are suspended pending federal investigation. The Department of Justice will review the incident. We are also issuing a formal statement by noon." Tianna's gaze drifted toward the faint reflection of her own face in the courtroom's glass. "Thank you, Chief. But I do not need a statement. I need a reform." Lowell hesitated. "Understood. But first, proceed with today's hearing as scheduled. The press will be watching. How you conduct this will define the narrative." Tianna nodded again, though her expression did not change. "Then let us make sure the narrative serves the truth." When the call ended, she stood and walked to the mirror that lined the far wall. The red mark on her cheek had dulled to a shadow, but she could still feel the heat of it. She whispered to herself, "A mark fades, but memory stays." Her clerk, Maria, entered timidly, clutching a folder. "Judge Blake," she said softly, "I wanted to apologize. I should have spoken sooner." Tianna turned to her, her tone steady but kind. "No, Maria. You spoke when it mattered. That takes courage." The young intern's eyes welled up. "Everyone outside is talking about it. The video already has over 2 million views." Tianna took a deep breath. "Then maybe they are finally seeing what we have lived through for years." A soft chime interrupted them. Carla Evans, Tianna's executive assistant, appeared on the screen from the judicial office. "Judge, the Oversight Division has requested full documentation of the incident. They also flagged a pattern. These officers have had 3 prior complaints from people of color, all dismissed without review." Tianna's jaw tightened. "Then this is not an incident. It is evidence." Carla nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I have already compiled a report. Do you want me to release it to the ethics board?" Tianna replied firmly, "Release it. Every word. Let transparency be louder than apology." The courtroom clock struck 10. The bailiff opened the doors, and the first case of the day was called, a civil rights appeal about racial profiling in a housing district. The irony was not lost on anyone. As the attorneys entered, whispers rippled across the room. Some recognized her from the breaking news. Others watched in quiet awe. Tianna adjusted her microphone. "Court is now in session," she said clearly. Her voice did not tremble. It filled the chamber with calm authority. The attorney for the defense, a young man in an expensive navy suit, cleared his throat nervously. "Your Honor," he began, "given the events this morning, we would understand if you wish to postpone." Tianna cut in gently. "Justice does not wait for comfort, counselor. Proceed." The room stilled. Even the court stenographer's fingers hesitated over the keys, as if capturing history. As the hearing progressed, Tianna's focus never wavered. Her mind, however, replayed the slap outside, the crowd, the disbelief. Each word she spoke in court now felt like a counterweight to that injustice. Every ruling was a reminder that authority does not need permission, it only needs integrity. When the session adjourned, she stood once more. "Before we close today," she said, addressing the courtroom, "I want to say something not as a judge, but as a citizen. What happened this morning is not an isolated act. It is a reflection of a deeper flaw, a reflex that sees color before character. I intend to use every power of this position to ensure accountability, not revenge, but reform." The audience in the gallery stood in quiet respect. Reporters scribbled frantically. Maria blinked back tears. Tianna placed her gavel down slowly, almost ceremonially, and added, "We are not here to shame anyone. We are here to wake everyone." Then she turned and exited through the side door. Carla's voice followed through the earpiece as she walked down the hall. "Judge, social media is calling this the day the system got judged." Tianna paused. "No," she said. "It is the day the system began to listen." And with that, she stepped into the corridor filled with waiting staff, officers, and cameras, ready not for fame, but for change. The courthouse lobby had transformed into a press arena by the time Judge Tianna Blake stepped out from the courtroom. Flashing lights burst like fireworks, microphones extended toward her, and reporters shouted overlapping questions that collided in the air. "Judge Blake, are you pressing charges? Judge Blake, how does it feel to be assaulted by your own law enforcement? Do you believe this will affect public trust in the system?" Tianna raised one hand, steady but not defensive. "Please," she said, her tone even, "this is not about me." The crowd quieted, the sound of camera shutters slowing. "It is about what we choose to ignore until it becomes too visible to deny." And today, the world saw what many have been living for years. Her words cut through the tension. Carla's voice buzzed softly through the earpiece, reminding her that her car was ready, but Tianna did not move yet. She turned to the cluster of officers standing at the far end of the lobby. Turner, Hale, and their captain, all visibly shaken, their badges removed, waiting for the official order that would decide their fate. The chief of security stepped forward awkwardly. "Your Honor," he said, "on behalf of the department, we apologize for—" Tianna interrupted gently but firmly. "Apologies are only the beginning, Captain. Accountability is what matters next." Turner lowered his eyes. Hale stared at the floor. Around them, the energy shifted again. This was not humiliation, but revelation. Tianna walked closer until she was only a few feet away from them. "You said earlier that I did not look like I belonged here," she said softly. "But the truth is, I did not need to look like power to have it. You only needed to look beyond your own bias." Turner swallowed hard. "We made a mistake," he whispered. "You made a choice," Tianna corrected, her voice sharp enough to pierce through the murmurs. "And choices have consequences." She turned to Carla, who was standing near the entrance with a folder in hand. "Are the disciplinary protocols in motion?" Carla nodded. "Yes, Judge. Internal Affairs and Ethics Review have been notified. Documentation has been sent to both the Department of Justice and the Civil Rights Bureau." Tianna's voice lowered, but it carried across the marble hall. "Good. Make sure every second of this morning's footage is archived and accessible to the public record. We do not bury truth here." Reporters scribbled faster. One of them asked, "Judge Blake, what happens now?" Tianna looked directly into the nearest camera. "Now, the same system that allowed this will be examined under its own laws." Then she turned toward the exit. Outside, the plaza had filled with citizens, some holding signs that read, "Justice has a name," others chanting quietly, not with anger, but solidarity. Maria, the young intern, stood near the steps, clutching a coffee cup with shaking hands. When she saw Tianna, she stepped forward hesitantly. "Judge, people are waiting to hear you speak." Tianna smiled faintly. "Then let us speak truth." She walked to the top of the steps, facing the crowd. The winter sun cut across her face, no longer harsh, but almost ceremonial. "This morning," she began, her voice projected without a microphone, "two men in uniform decided who belonged and who did not. They thought they were protecting the system. But the system does not need protection from its people. It needs to be protected from its prejudice." The crowd was silent, completely still, except for the soft hum of live streaming phones capturing every word. "I do not stand here to seek revenge," she continued. "I stand here because silence has been the accomplice of injustice for too long. If today's humiliation is what it takes to open eyes, then let it be worth it." The applause began softly, then grew into a unified wave that filled the entire plaza. Tianna waited for it to fade before speaking again. "Justice is not an office," she said, her tone almost breaking into emotion. "It is a practice. And from today forward, I promise to make sure it is practiced equally, no matter what color walks through those doors." Maria lowered her head, tears rolling down her cheeks. Reporters stood frozen, unsure whether to ask another question or simply listen. Behind them, Turner and Hale were being escorted away quietly by internal investigators. No handcuffs this time, just silence. Carla approached, whispering, "Judge, the governor's office is requesting a statement by evening." Tianna nodded. "They will get one, but it will not be written by PR. It will be written by truth." She looked out at the crowd one last time before stepping down the stairs. The sun reflected on the courthouse seal beneath her feet. "The law is not blind," she said under her breath. "It just needs to learn to see again." As she walked toward her car, the sound of applause followed her, not the sound of victory, but the sound of awakening. The ride back to her chambers was quiet, but Tianna Blake's mind was anything but. Through the tinted window of the government car, she watched the city blur by. The courthouse receding behind her like a shadow she could still feel on her skin. Carla sat across from her, tablet open, reading messages flooding in from judicial offices, civil rights groups, and news outlets around the country. "Judge Blake," she said carefully, "your speech has gone viral. 6 million views and counting. People are calling it the reckoning on the steps. The governor wants a private meeting this evening. The Attorney General's office has also requested a statement." Tianna exhaled slowly, her gaze still on the window. "I did not plan to become a headline, Carla. I planned to do my job." Carla nodded. "I know, but it seems your job has become bigger than the bench." Tianna's eyes softened. "That is the problem with systems built on silence. The moment someone speaks truth, it sounds like rebellion." The car stopped at the Federal Judiciary Complex, a building she had walked into 1,000 times before, but never like this. Security guards straightened as she entered, their faces marked with respect and shame in equal measure. No one said a word. The marble lobby, once sterile, now carried a quiet reverence. Inside her office, sunlight poured through the tall windows, warming the edge of her mahogany desk. Carla placed the tablet down. "There is something else," she said. "The oversight team found emails from one of the officers, Turner. He sent internal memos mocking diversity programs, calling them optics projects. There is also a report that he was previously disciplined for excessive force, but reassigned instead of terminated." Tianna's jaw tightened. So the problem did not start today. It just got caught today. She turned to the wall of law degrees behind her, the framed symbols of a system she had devoted her life to believing could be fair. "Prepare a judicial review request. I want his entire case history reopened. And not just his. Every officer under his command." Carla hesitated. "That will trigger a full departmental audit." Tianna nodded. "Exactly." Carla's phone buzzed again, and she glanced at the screen. "Judge, you might want to see this." She handed the tablet to Tianna. On the display was a live broadcast from the steps of the courthouse. 2 young women of color stood holding signs that read, "We are next. We belong here." Behind them, a crowd chanted her name. Tianna's throat tightened. "They should not have to chant for belonging," she murmured. Carla looked at her carefully. "Would you like to make a public address?" Tianna shook her head. "No, not yet. Today is not about words anymore. It is about what follows them." The office intercom beeped softly. "Judge Blake," said her assistant on the line. "The Chief Justice is here to see you." Tianna straightened her posture. "Send him in." Chief Justice Lowell entered, removing his hat with quiet respect. "Judge Blake," he began, "you have my full support. What happened this morning was inexcusable. I have already authorized the Department of Justice inquiry. But I must ask, how far are you planning to take this?" Tianna met his gaze without flinching. "As far as truth requires." Lowell sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "The system is under a microscope right now. Every move you make will set precedent. Are you ready for that kind of weight?" Tianna smiled faintly. "I have carried heavier weights in silence. This time, I intend to carry them aloud." The chief nodded slowly. "Then God help the system, because you are about to change it." When he left, Tianna sat back and stared at the city skyline beyond the glass. She remembered her mother's voice from decades ago, soft but strong. Never let them make you small, baby. Even if they call it order. She whispered those words now, like a quiet oath. Carla broke the silence. Judge, you have an invitation to appear on national television tonight. Tianna shook her head again. Let the cameras talk to the people who were silent before. My work is not for prime time. It is for permanence. She stood, walked to the window, and looked down at the courthouse below. The plaza was still filled with people, not angry but awakened. Carla, she said softly, open the Justice Equity Protocol draft we started last year. Carla blinked. You mean the reform proposal that got buried in committee? Yes, Tianna replied. We are bringing it back. And this time, no one buries it. The city outside glowed with afternoon light, golden and fierce. Tianna Blake stood tall in her office, her reflection merging with the skyline. This is not the aftermath, she said quietly. This is the beginning. That evening, Judge Tianna Blake stood at the window of her office, the city lights shimmering like distant promises. The Justice Equity Protocol file glowed faintly on her computer screen, a document she had once written in frustration but now read with clarity. Carla sat nearby, typing notes while fielding calls from state officials, journalists, and civil rights organizations. Judge, she said, lowering her voice, the governor's office confirmed they will attend tomorrow's emergency meeting. They want to hear your proposal in full. Tianna nodded. Good. Then tomorrow we stop talking about reform and start building it. Her tone carried the same calm she had shown that morning, but underneath it, there was resolve sharpened by humiliation. The knock on her door broke the moment. Maria entered, still wearing her intern badge, her hands trembling slightly as she held out a printed report. Judge Blake, I thought you should see this, she said nervously. Tianna took the report and scanned it. It was a compiled list of complaints against the city's police department. Each entry was stamped, unsubstantiated, in bold red letters. Where did you get this? Tianna asked. Maria swallowed hard. It was in the digital archive. I checked after you mentioned the audit. These were hidden files. Someone tried to bury them by reclassifying them as anonymous reports. Carla looked up from her desk. That is illegal. Tianna set the paper down, her expression unreadable. No, Carla, it is worse than illegal. It is deliberate. She turned to Maria. You did the right thing. Do not touch the files again. I will have the federal auditors handle it. Maria nodded quickly, but her voice shook. Judge, they are going to come after you for this. They will say you are biased. Tianna smiled faintly. They already have. But the truth is not bias. It is evidence. Maria hesitated, then whispered, I saw what they did to you this morning. My mother called crying when she watched the video. She said she had seen the same thing happen to her brother in the 70s. She wanted me to tell you. Thank you. Tianna's eyes softened. Tell your mother the fight just changed hands. And this time, we are not giving it back. When Maria left, Carla stood and walked toward the desk. You know they are going to resist this, right? The unions, the city, even some judges. You are about to challenge decades of culture. Tianna leaned back in her chair. Culture only survives when good people defend it. I am not defending this one. She clicked her mouse, opening a new file labeled Protocol Launch. Carla, I want you to schedule a press briefing for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Invite media from across the country. We are not going to leak change. We are going to announce it. Carla hesitated. That will make it official. Once it is public, there is no going back. Tianna looked her in the eye. Exactly. The room fell into a heavy silence, the kind that comes before transformation. Tianna stood and walked to the large window, gazing out at the courthouse illuminated by floodlights. You know, she said quietly, I used to believe justice was something we had to earn by proving ourselves. But today taught me it is something we have to reclaim by standing up. Carla nodded. You turned pain into policy, Judge. Tianna smiled slightly. Pain has always been the best lawyer. The office phone rang. Carla answered, listened, then handed the receiver to Tianna. It is Chief Justice Lowell. Tianna took it. Chief. His voice was low and deliberate. Judge Blake, the governor's office just informed me that federal monitors will attend your presentation tomorrow. That is unprecedented. Good, Tianna replied. It is time they witnessed how reform begins. Lowell paused. You understand, if this succeeds, it will set a new national standard. But if it fails, they will blame you. Tianna's tone did not waver. then let them. History has always started with blame before it found courage. When the call ended, she sat back down and began typing revisions to the Justice Equity Protocol. Every word felt like a promise written in steel. Carla watched her, awe in her eyes. "Judge," she said softly, "what happens after tomorrow?" Tianna's fingers paused above the keyboard. "After tomorrow," she said, "no one will be able to say they did not know." The clock struck midnight. The courthouse lights dimmed one by one, leaving only the faint glow from her window. Tianna closed her laptop and whispered to the empty room. For every name buried in silence, this is for you. Then she turned off the light, ready for the morning that would not just test the system, it would redefine it. The next morning arrived like a held breath, the kind that carried the weight of everything that had not yet been said. The federal courthouse was surrounded by news vans, protesters, and onlookers holding signs that read "Justice is watching" and "Accountability now." Inside, the main conference hall had been converted into an emergency assembly. Cameras lined the back wall, their red lights blinking like unblinking eyes. Judge Tianna Blake entered through a side door, escorted by Carla and 2 court officers. She wore a dark navy suit, the color of calm authority. Every step she took echoed through the chamber, a reminder that silence no longer belonged to the powerful alone. Carla whispered, "Judge, all departments are connected to the live feed. Every federal district is watching this broadcast." Tianna nodded once. "Then let us make it count." She walked to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and scanned the room. On her left sat the governor, stone-faced but uneasy. To her right, Chief Justice Lowell sat with folded hands, his expression unreadable. Rows of officers, officials, and reporters filled the seats. The air was thick with anticipation. "Good morning," Tianna began, her voice steady and deliberate. "Yesterday, this courthouse became a mirror, and what it reflected was not just an assault on one person, but on the very idea of equal justice." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. She continued, "For too long, we have excused prejudice as protocol and silence as professionalism. That ends today." She pressed a button on the podium. Behind her, a screen lit up with the title, "The Justice Equity Protocol, a Framework for Reform." "This proposal," she said, "is not a speech. It is a system that ensures every officer, every clerk, every judge is held to the same standard of accountability." The slides advanced. Bullet points appeared, each one more specific than the last. Transparent review boards, mandatory bias audits, civilian oversight committees, equity training certification, and immediate disciplinary response systems. Tianna explained each one clearly, her tone firm but measured. "We cannot punish our way to equality," she said. "We must structure our way to fairness." The governor leaned toward his aide, whispering something, but Tianna did not pause. "This is not anti-police," she added. "It is pro-accountability. It is pro-integrity. Because justice should never depend on who is holding the badge or who is standing in front of it." Reporters typed furiously. The live comments from the broadcast began to scroll across the lower screen. "Powerful, she is rewriting the system. This is history." Tianna gestured to the final slide, which displayed a simple quote. "Justice is not neutral. It chooses the brave." "We are not here to assign guilt," she said. "We are here to reclaim trust." Chief Justice Lowell stood and addressed the audience. "Judge Blake, the committee has reviewed your framework overnight. The proposal is bold, and some may call it disruptive, but the board unanimously agrees. It will be implemented statewide effective immediately." Gasps filled the room. Even Carla looked stunned. The governor shifted uncomfortably, but offered a slow nod. "Then it is settled," he said. "The Justice Equity Protocol will begin pilot testing in all major districts within 30 days. Tianna allowed herself one quiet breath of relief. It was not victory, it was validation. The kind that only comes after surviving disbelief. From the corner of the room, Maria, the intern, raised her phone and whispered, "She did it." The feed from her camera streamed live to millions watching across the country. Tianna looked at the crowd, her voice softer now. "We cannot erase yesterday," she said, "but we can decide what tomorrow looks like. And tomorrow begins with accountability." The room erupted in applause, but she did not smile. She simply closed the folder on the podium and said, "Meeting adjourned." As she turned to leave, Chief Justice Lowell approached her. "You just rewrote state history in 15 minutes, he said. Tianna replied, "I did not rewrite it. I corrected it." Outside, as she stepped into the sunlight, Carla handed her a phone showing headlines from across the nation. Judge Blake's protocol becomes national model. Federal inquiry expands after viral incident. Tianna looked up at the sky, blue and unbroken, and whispered, "Now let us see if justice can finally stand without falling back." The applause from inside still echoed faintly behind her as she descended the courthouse steps, not as a victim of the system, but as the architect of its reform. The next 48 hours moved like history being written in real time. Across the nation, news outlets replayed footage of Judge Tianna Blake unveiling the Justice Equity Protocol. Commentators debated its reach, its implications, and its power. Some called it revolutionary, others called it dangerous, but everyone called it inevitable. At the federal courthouse, Tianna's office became a command center. Stacks of new case files filled her desk, and every phone in the building rang with requests from other states wanting to replicate her framework. Carla was running on coffee and adrenaline. "Judge, you have a request from Washington, D.C. The Department of Justice wants to hold a joint press conference by the end of the week." Tianna looked up from the document she was reviewing. "We will do it," she said, "but not as celebration. As confirmation that this system will be enforced, not just announced." She turned back to her notes, the quiet authority in her voice steady despite the storm of attention around her. The door opened, and Maria stepped in, holding a printed stack of emails. "Judge, these are letters from citizens," she said. "Most are from people who experienced racial profiling and finally felt seen." Tianna took one envelope and read silently. The handwriting was shaky, written in blue ink. It was from a retired teacher in Atlanta. "I am 72 years old," it read. "When I saw you stand there in silence after they hit you, I cried. Because I have spent a lifetime being told to stay quiet. Thank you for proving that dignity can speak louder than anger." Tianna folded the letter slowly, her throat tightening. "These are not just letters," she said softly. "They are evidence of why we cannot stop." Carla looked up from her laptop. "Judge, I think you should address the nation. People are asking for your voice, not just your policy." Tianna leaned back in her chair. "The last time I spoke to the public, I was bleeding. This time, I want to speak as a builder." Carla smiled faintly. "Then let us build the stage." By late afternoon, the courthouse media room was filled with reporters again. Unlike before, the crowd was not hostile, it was reverent. The room buzzed with a different kind of tension, one made of expectation and respect. When Tianna entered, the cameras focused, and the noise settled instantly. She stood at the podium, her posture composed, her expression clear. "2 days ago," she began, "this courthouse was a scene of humiliation. Today, it is a symbol of reconstruction. The Justice Equity Protocol is not my idea. It is our collective answer to what we have ignored for too long." She paused, letting the silence breathe. "Change is not comfortable. It never was. But comfort is not what justice was built for." She explained that the first phase of implementation would begin immediately, including independent review panels for every district and mandatory de-escalation and bias training for all law enforcement officers. "Every complaint will be traceable," she said, "every violation accountable. There will be no more buried reports, no more invisible victims." Reporters nodded, typing furiously. One raised his hand. "Judge Blake, some critics say you are dismantling trust between law enforcement and the judiciary. How do you respond?" Tianna's expression did not shift. "Trust built on fear is not trust. It is dependency. We are replacing dependency with integrity." The crowd murmured approval. As she concluded, she said, "Justice does not need to shout to be heard. It just needs to be seen doing what is right." The applause that followed was not explosive. It was deliberate, controlled, and sincere. Later that evening, Tianna sat in her office alone. The courthouse was quiet again, but this silence felt earned. Carla entered softly. "Judge, I just got confirmation. The Department of Justice officially endorsed the protocol. It is going nationwide." Tianna closed her eyes for a brief moment, absorbing the weight of it. "Then it begins," she whispered. Carla hesitated. "You did it, Judge." Tianna opened her eyes. "No, Carla. We started it. The doing never ends." Outside, The courthouse lights glowed through the fog like a promise finally kept. For the first time in years, Tianna allowed herself a small, genuine smile. Tomorrow, she said quietly, we make justice routine. And with that, she turned off her desk lamp, leaving only the golden seal of the courthouse glowing in the dark, a reminder that real change does not need a spotlight. It just needs someone brave enough to start it. 3 months later, the world outside the courthouse no longer looked the same. The marble steps where Judge Tianna Blake had once been humiliated now carried a bronze plaque engraved with her words, "Justice does not wait for comfort." The Justice Equity Protocol had spread across 27 states, reshaping the way institutions handled bias and accountability. News anchors called it the Blake Standard. For Tianna, though, it was not about the recognition. It was about the quiet proof that change could live longer than outrage. The courthouse lobby that once felt cold now felt different. Posters promoting fairness and public transparency lined the walls. Officers greeted visitors with open respect, not suspicion. And every morning, the sound of the security scanner beeped over voices that no longer whispered judgment. On that spring morning, Tianna walked through those same glass doors she had once been pushed away from. Carla was beside her, holding a folder labeled National Implementation Report. "Judge," Carla said with a smile, "it is official. The Department of Justice approved the national rollout. They are calling it a landmark reform." Tianna nodded. "It is not a reform until it lasts," she said. "But it is a beginning." Maria, now promoted to administrative clerk, joined them, carrying 2 coffee cups. "Judge, there is a group of law students waiting to meet you in the courtroom. They came all the way from Atlanta. They want to hear your story." Tianna smiled faintly. "Then let us make sure they hear more than a story. Let them hear the truth." Inside the courtroom, the young students stood in silence as she entered. The same wooden bench that once witnessed chaos now radiated calm. Tianna looked at them, a diverse group of faces full of hope and nerves. "Before I was a judge," she began, "I was a woman who believed silence could earn respect. I learned that silence only protects the comfortable. The law you study is not just words, it is a living promise. And that promise only matters when you have the courage to keep it." A young man raised his hand timidly. "Judge Blake," he asked, "were you afraid that day?" Tianna paused, her gaze softening. "Yes," she admitted. "But courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to act in spite of it. Fear teaches us who we are, but integrity decides who we become." The students nodded, many taking notes, others simply listening with wide eyes. Carla watched from the back of the room, her expression filled with quiet pride. After the session, one student approached Tianna and handed her a small card. It read, "I applied to law school because of you." Tianna smiled, holding the card gently as if it were fragile. "Then make sure you do not become me," she said kindly. "Become better." Later that afternoon, Tianna stood once more on the courthouse steps. A small crowd had gathered, citizens, reporters, and employees. The plaque shimmered in the sunlight beside her. She took a breath and addressed them one final time. 3 months ago, these steps were a place of shame. Today, they are a place of change. We did not rewrite justice. We reminded it how to see. We proved that power without empathy is just noise. But power guided by conscience can build something permanent. The wind caught her words, carrying them across the plaza. Cameras flashed, but this time the focus was not on spectacle, it was on legacy. "This moment," Tianna continued, "is not mine. It belongs to everyone who has ever been told to wait for fairness, to everyone who was dismissed before being heard. You are the reason justice now has a pulse." The applause that followed was soft but unending. As she turned to re-enter the courthouse, Carla whispered, "Judge, what will you do now?" Tianna looked up at the tall columns stretching into the sky. "Keep showing up," she said. "Justice is not an event. It is a lifetime." The doors closed behind her, sealing the sound of change into the walls. Outside, a little girl held her mother's hand and pointed toward the plaque. "Mom," she asked, "was that the lady they said could not go inside?" Her mother smiled. "Yes, sweetheart. But she did go inside. And she never left." As the sun lowered over the city, the courthouse glowed golden, no longer a fortress but a beacon, a reminder that justice, when reclaimed with dignity, becomes unstoppable.